Howdy folks, this is the code along for the packet 2, problem 2 problem of doing a little BMI calculator. So just like the last time, we're going to start off without writing any code, but thinking about, well, what are we going to do? And so in this case, we got to look at the requirements of the problem, which are pretty straightforward. We're going to get some input from the user, which is weight in pounds and height in inches. We are going to calculate and show the BMI, which stands for body mass index. If you don't know, it's used in a lot of sort of medical and fitness stuff to kind of just talk about general healthiness. And we need to print out a message based on one of the 4 choices on the chart. So that's really like what we kind of have to do. The second piece of this is because I want to sort of practice some of the other things that we learned. I have these what I call clean code goals. And the clean code goals are, hey, I want to organize my code using a function, and I want to be pretty thoughtful about the if statements that I use. I want to, have a choice between if statements and else if statements, which ones are the right tool for the job, and I really want to be able to say, you know what, I did this as efficiently as possible. So I might do it one way and then maybe tidy it up in a second way. So now that we have these kind of requirements and goals, let's come up with a plan. So you can see here that the first thing in my plan is make test cases for each BMI category. So if my goal is to calculate and display the BMI and print out the proper message, I really should make sure that I know what numbers are supposed to come out, based on what I put in. So I kind of did that off to the side. You can do it on your own. I can show you kind of what I did here. So I took the BMI calculation. I came up with a BMI number that I wanted. So I picked 17 because I knew that was the underweight category. So I just said, hey, give me a BMI target of 17. I'm going to say the person weighs 100 pounds. Then I'm going to do the algebra to figure out what the height in inches should be. So it turned out that if you are 64 inches tall and weigh 100 pounds, you're going to have a 17 BMI. And so I just did that for a couple of different BMIs in each category. So I went here to 17 BMI, just like I talked about, 21 because, so this is my underweight case, this is my normal case, this is my overweight case, and this is my obese case, but I put it as a special case because if you look at the chart, how it's sort of written, it's a little bit confusing about like where like 18.5 and 25, like which category should it be in. So I wanted to put one that was right on that borderline so that I knew that I was handling those cases specifically. So I got 4 numbers that I can check, and so I feel good that I'm testing the 4 cases. Okay, the if statements that I'm going to have, there's 4 cases. So I should probably have 4 if statements or 4 checks of some way. At least I gotta have 4 things to deal with. So we'll get to that in a second. So I made my categories, awesome. I need to make a function to calculate BMI. And I just want to do that because that's that's a good way to organize my code. That meets one of my clean code goals. And then I want a test that makes the right numbers. So before I work on any of the statements, I'm just going to make sure my function is generating the right numbers. And so there we go. That's my plan. So let's switch over here to code blocks. And same thing as before. I want to lay out my my function that I am probably going to use. And in this case, I want to make a function that calculates the BMI, but this time it's not going to be a void. It's going to be a number that I'm going to use other places in my program. So I'm going to make a double. I'm going to call it calc BMI because I'm calculating the BMI. And well, what are the things that I'm going to take in? Well, honestly, I'm going to take in 2 doubles. And that's because, height and weight in inches, right, are my 2 inputs. And so I want to make sure that I'm doing that correctly. And you know what? They might put in a half, or they might weigh 154.3 pounds or something like that. So you know what? Doubles make sense more than integers. I'm going to copy that because I'm going to work on making my function right away. And I'm going to do my double. I'm going to use, in this case, h for height and w for width. And double typing that. But so now I'm going to make some things. So I am going to make a variable that's going to sort of do this little function calculation. So now the formula, if you remember, is, I'll type it up here. It's weight times 703, the whole thing divided by height squared. Okay, so so we could do this in a lot of ways. We could kind of write it all in one line, which I think is probably easiest for this. And so I'm going to do this kind of like this. I'm going to make something called result. Okay, and let's see. I'm going to just say. Actually, I'm going to call it BMI result. Okay. And then, well, what am I going to do? Well, let's do the top. The top is going to be the weight times 703. And I'm putting some parentheses in here just to make sure everything is tidy. And then I'm going to do h times h because, if I'm just multiplying two numbers together, I don't need to have an extra function call right there. So I'm going to do weight times 703, height times height. And then I'm going to use the return command because I'm going to send this value back. And I'm going to send back BMI result. So here, a nice simple function. Now I want to test, does this work? So how can I test that it work? Well, I need to go into my main, and I'm going to have three values that I'm going to get, right? I'm going to have my height, my weight, and my BMI, because those are the three things that I'm going to get sent my way. So then I'm going to see out. I'm going to ask the person for the inputs, because remember that was part of our plan. And I'll say, please enter height in inches. It's really good. Even though we've read the problem and we know what we are supposed to be entering, in 2 weeks, we might not remember that we're entering the height in inches. And so if we don't leave a good message for ourselves and we don't cue the user, then hey, they're not going to know how to do it. So it's important to actually tell the user everything that they want, that they need to input. And I'm going to do the same thing here. Please enter weight in pounds. Oops. Okay, so I have those things. And then the next thing is now I'm going to use BMI, and I'm going to call my function, calc BMI. And in this case, I'm going to send it height and weight. So I'm going to make sure that I put it in the same order as I did my function. I did height first, then weight. And then I want to see out BMI, just to see if I did it right. So now I'm going to just stop. I'm going to run my program just as it is. I'm not going to put in any of those if statements. I just did a lot of work here. Let's check to make sure this is working the way that we want. So I'm going to run it real quick, make sure there's no errors. And it says, please enter the height in inches. Great. So let's use one of those test cases that I came up with. So if you remember, I have a test case. Here are my test cases. So let's try to get 17 BMI. So I'm going to put in 100 weight and 64 height. Okay, 64, 100. Perfect. And I got 17 and a little change. I forgot to mention I did a little bit of rounding. I didn't, it's actually slightly more than 64, but I rounded and I got in the ballpark that I wanted. Awesome. Okay, let's look at the other ones that we have. Let's try this one. So 57 and 100. Let's give that another run. So 57 and 100. Okay, that gave me in the ballpark of 21. I'm feeling pretty good about that calculation. Okay, and then let's do 51 and 100. Okay, 51 and 100, and I got 27. We switch it over to code blocks. You can see there it's kind of small, but it came out as 27, and I'm feeling pretty good. So now that I know that my BMI is correct, now I can go into printing out the messages. So I'm just going to make a note up here at the top. Okay, so what were my my categories? Well, I had 18.5 was the low end. So if I get my problems up here, I know that 18.5 and below is underweight. And then I have 18.5 to 25 is normal. And I have 25 to 30 is overweight. And 30 plus is obese. So I got a little decision making here. See, these numbers overlap, and I can't be both normal and overweight, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say if you're below 18.5, okay, you're underweight. Okay, and if you're below 25, you're normal. And if you're below 30, you're overweight. And if you're above 30 or above, obese. That sort of makes sense. So I'm going to sort of say if the upper end is actually in the other category. And that'll sort of be my assumption about how to do it. Okay, so next thing we want to do is we want to ask questions. So let's just get the first case working and make sure that it works the way that we want. So I'm going to say if BMI is less than 18.5, well, let's print out your BMI is, oh wait, I should actually do that beforehand, because every time I'm going to print out your BMI, right? That's part of the thing that I need to do. Okay. And then I can print out you are underweight. Okay, you can put cute messages in here, whatever you feel like. So now I have a case where I know that I'm underweight. So if you remember, I had a test case to check to see if the BMI was below that. So let's make sure that it's printing out before we do too much more. So hey, what was my height? My height was 64. My weight was 100. Your BMI is 17 and change, and you are underweight. So I tested that it worked the way that I wanted, so that feels good. So the next question is, well, how do I do this normal one? So there's two ways to do it. There's one way, which I think a lot of people want to do, which is this. If BMI is greater than or equal to 18.5 and BMI is less than 25. See out. You are normal. Maybe I should say your BMI is normal. I don't think we all are normal in any sort of useful way. So this is one way to do it. But let's talk, and this is going to work. So then if I put my my other category in, so if I put in 57 inches, 100 pounds, hey, your BMI is normal. Great. printed out the message that I wanted. But remember that we put down over here, one of our goals was to use, sort of tidy up our if statements a little bit. So let's take a second to put in the other two if statements, which I have copied and pasted here, in the same format that we were using. So I have if BMI is greater than 25, less than 30, and then I have if the BMI is greater than equal to 30, your BMI is obese. So the reason I say we want to clean up our if statements a little bit is notice that we have 4 things that can happen, right? We can print out one of these 4 messages. But we're actually asking 6 questions. We're asking, is this less? Is this greater than? Is this less? Is this greater than? Is this less? Is this greater than? So that's 6 questions to pick 4 things. It feels like we could do a little bit better than that. And on top of that, there's no case where we're going to want to print out I'm underweight and overweight, right? I'm going to be one of these things. So this is a good time to throw in some of these else if statements. Because if we have an else if statement, what that's really saying is, hey, I have a list of choices and I only want one of them picked. So that kind of handles that, being clear if somebody's looking at our code that only one of these is going to get selected. It's this one, or it's this one, or it's this one, or it's this one. Yeah, right? If it's not, pick this. If it's not, pick this. But if we throw in this else statement, right, we can only go to an else statement if the if statement above it is false, right? So if I was bigger than 18.5, then I would hop down and ask this question. So all of a sudden it becomes pretty clear that this is a little bit of an extra question that we don't need. Of course we're going to be bigger than 18.5 if we make it to the else, because we already asked it about, hey, are you less than 18.5? So I really want to we can just get rid of this. It doesn't serve any purpose. It doesn't explain, it doesn't give us any additional information that we didn't already have. And so this is kind of a cool little thing about using our logic is that, hey, look, we don't have to ask nearly as many questions if we're clever about how we use these else if statements. Oh, look, and this last one, hey, look, I just asked if it's less than 30. Well, obviously it must be 30 or greater. And so I don't even need to ask the question there. I can just say, well, if you failed this test, you must be obese because you weren't in any of the other categories. This is the only other case. So now I actually got down. I only asked 3 questions and I can figure out the 4 things. So that kind of meets that goal of tidying up our if statements. And that's something that we can do a lot with else if statements and just coding in general. Hey, we had something that we knew worked, but we can make it a little bit nicer, a little bit easier for somebody else to come in and read. And that's what that writing clean code is all about. So let's give this a quick test. We want to flip it over here and double check our special case that we had was this one that was right on the border of overweight and obese. So 48, tall, 100 in terms of weight. So let's give that a run. Okay, so 48 tall, 100 pounds in weight. We got 30.5 and our BMI is obese. So that's great. So that means that we were able to hit all categories. We feel confident that we have these edge cases, no problem, right? Because if we got 24.99999, hey, we'd show up as normal because we are definitely less than 25. So that feels good. So let's double check that we've met all the requirements because we've been coding for a little while. Let's double check that that's all the case. So what are our requirements? We got the user. We need to calculate and display the BMI. We need to indicate the proper message based on the chart. So we're printing out the message. We're doing the based on the chart. Looks like this is something that we can turn in. Great. Thanks. Good luck on the next problem.